Michigan Liberation is a statewide network of people and organizations organizing to end the criminalization of Black families and communities of color in Michigan. We envision a state without mass incarceration, mass policing, and punishment. We envision a state with the best public education in the nation, single-payer health care, and thriving Black and brown communities. Here on the Respect the Roots podcast, we will lift up the stories and experiences of those impacted by mass incarceration, collective ties to the criminal legal system, and the frontline efforts to end mass incarceration.
All right, everybody. Can everybody hear? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, everybody. Let's get started with our discussion for tonight. Well, first of all, I'm Miss Marjan. Let's go around, introduce ourselves.
I'll kick us off. Hey, everyone. I'm Ashley. I prefer to go by Ash. Pronouns she, they, and sunshine. And I'm the lead organizer on Michigan Liberation's Care Not Criminalization campaign.
Thank you, Ash. Let me go back. I apologize, everybody. I'm Miss Marjan, pronouns she, her, and I'm the comms director of this amazing organization, Michigan Liberation. I'm going to go ahead and popcorn it over to Ray.
Yeah, thanks, Marjan. Hey, everyone. My name is Ray Lanier. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director for Michigan Liberation. And I'll pass it over to Allie.
And I'm Alexandria. I'm the Supreme Court organizer with Michigan Liberation. I go by Allie. Pronouns are she and her.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Well, let's talk about who we are. We already know we're part of what? Michigan Liberation, an amazing organization. Anybody want to talk about Michigan Liberation? There's so much we can say about it, but anybody want to give everybody a quick little sentence or few about who Michigan Liberation is and who we are?
Yeah, I can get us started. First thing that comes to mind for me, grassroots, power building, focused on ending mass incarceration and leadership.
Hey, that's cool. Anybody else want to chime in real quickly?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I would also say, who are we? We are a bridge to uplift the underserved and those whose voices aren't heard, to make sure that they are heard. We're that bridge to the bridge to power.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'll add on top of that is we are fighting to end mass incarceration through the fundamentals of abolitionist organizing.
Hey, that's what's up. Everybody, if you're listening, watching, please put your comments in the comment section of Facebook or YouTube. Please, we want you to be engaged with this conversation tonight. And our conversation tonight, you guys want to go ahead and get straight into the nitty-gritty?
Let's jump into it.
Okay. Well, tonight's topic is bullets, brutality, and body bags. A conversation on Detroit policing, mental health, and public safety and everything. So, all right. I just want to make sure everybody knows what we're going to be talking about and everything. So let's go ahead and start with the first thing. We already talked about who we are, but why are we here tonight? Okay. And I'm just going to open it up on the floor. We called this conversation or discussion very last minute, but it's something that we definitely need to discuss with the public. So I'll let whoever wants to go first talk about why we are here tonight.
Yeah, I'll jump in and feel free to add anything, Ray or Allie. So we're here, and part of what called this discussion together was the recent killing of the 20-year-old young man by BPD, who was living with mental health considerations. And this is at least the third time in 3 years where something like this has been public, or at least made public, and enough is enough. Death and incarceration are not the answers for getting help for people with mental health considerations.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that, Ashley. Anybody else want to chime in while we're here tonight?
I guess for me, just what keeps coming to my mind is that this wasn't the first time they responded. It's been multiple times, and we constantly hear the narrative of community policing works, from law enforcement and from a lot of elected officials, and that's often the go-to in these situations, or just in general with policing, I guess. But this is an example of how it is not. They have had encounters with this man prior to now. They have so-called built a relationship like they quote unquote say they do when they do community policing, and that did not work. And it's just time to try something different. We can't keep doing the same thing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And I don't know if we like specifically said it, but I just want to say, um, yeah, say that this young man should not have died. Um, we often talk about in this org when we bring up concepts like abolition, um, how it's not necessarily about anarchy. It's actually about getting the support you expect when you make the call. Um, Police are not just responding to hardened criminals, right? Hard crime on the street. Oftentimes, they're responding to family disturbances, situations where caregivers and loved ones only have the police to call. And unfortunately, a lot of times it results in instances like this. The fact that this young person was shot with multiple clips for a mental health response is unbelievable and it's unacceptable. And then for later responses to dig into this young man's past who clearly has needed support, whose family has clearly struggled getting adequate support to justify the execution of this man, is unbelievable and unacceptable. And I think the last thing that I'll mention is I think there have been reports there may have been a social worker on the scene. It really makes me question who had power in that situation. There's been a lot of talks around policing and having mental health counselors on the scene. Well, here we go. Are the police actually empowering these non lethal support systems to act in ways that are in accordance with their skill set? I don't think that this situation says that. I'm also, quite frankly, questioning uh, Police Chief White, who prides himself as being both a licensed social worker and a cop,
Hmm.
who has been charged, felt himself charged to change the culture of Detroit policing after they were sued for unscrupulous dealings with their narcotics unit, after they were sued and had a restraining order put out on them in 2020. Here we are in another year with multiple instances of folks getting shot, people asking for help and ending up dead. So I know we're going to like dig into a lot of this, but as a community, member, a person who is deeply invested in building thriving communities, um, I'm just saying that the math is not mathing.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Right.
I'll pass it back to you, Marjan.
Yeah, you're right. Let's dig into it. Let's get into like the history of policing and mental health and substance use, if you don't mind, everybody. If we can start kind of giving some theory or some a history lesson for the folks that are watching and everything. And please, everybody, make sure if you got any comments, questions, put it in the comment section of Facebook or YouTube. All right. And we will put it on the screen. Yes, this is a interaction. This is not us just preaching to you and talking to you. We want to get in a conversation with you as well. So go ahead. I apologize. Y'all go ahead. What is the state of play?
So I think some interesting things to talk about is some of the statistics, right? So in 2021, according to the Police Violent Report, 57% of killings by police, which equaled roughly about to 598 deaths, were traffic stops and police responses to mental health crisis in situations where, no one was being threatened. And I also think it's important to note that nationally, roughly 42% of police killings are people who live with mental health considerations and have a diagnosis. So just imagine all the other ones that haven't quite been diagnosed, because in a lot of BIPOC communities, there's a lot of folks who are undiagnosed. There's really no access to health insurance or a psychiatrist or therapy to actually get these diagnoses. And a lot of them are also living every day in unsavory environments that, bring out PTSD and anxiety and depression, but they're just walking around and it's undiagnosed. So that's one thing that comes to mind and talks about like the state of things nationally and in the state or even locally. Like a lot of people are dying just due to the fact that they live with mental health considerations, and that's unacceptable. We need more access to treatment. Here in Michigan, there are only 5 state-ran mental health hospitals, and they're a nice ways away from where most BIPOC communities are. And on top of that, there's only 20 mental health centers throughout the state, in a state that has 84 counties. So that's vastly underserved.
Wow. So Ashley, let me stop you for a minute. You mean to tell me 5 mental health hospitals, 20 health facilities, and we've got what, over 84 counties in Michigan?
Yes.
83 counties.
83. Okay, thank you, Ray. So let's just really dig into that. You don't have to be a math genius to know that something's really messed up with those numbers. It's a setup, right?
And
Absolutely. And
even,
oh, go ahead. You
oh,
got
go
it.
ahead.
You got it, Ellie.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say even like if you look to our past, it'll help you understand how today echoes that in terms of how discrimination and mental health intersect. Like you see today, I saw something that the CDC said where 50% of individuals be diagnosed with mental illness in their lifetime. And when you understand that and then understand like where mental health is now in the world, understanding that, a lot of mental health developments didn't come around till the 50s, 60s, and 70s, then you'll understand that there is a community not being served. Because around those times in the 50s, you have the 1964 Civil Rights Act, you have Voting Rights Act, you have all these ways that things start to become accessible to Black and BIPOC communities. And, connecting that with redlining everything that followed, it helps you understand why we are here today and that we need to do better.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in and add that so there are 83 counties in the state of Michigan. We live in Wayne, which is one of them. And yet, Wayne County provides, I think, a little bit over 30% of the Michigan Department of Corrections inhabitants, right? Their incarcerated population. One county out of 83 providing a third of the population for the state prison system. When you talk about the 5 facilities that are available statewide and the other 20 providers, where are they at? They're not Wayne County, right? And I'd be willing to bet that the counties that do have those mental health facilities do not have the same disparities when it comes to over policing and the over incarceration and degradation of these communities. The other thing that I want to add is keep that 30% in your mind. Michigan Department of Corrections currently is the largest mental health provider in the state.
Wow.
It is the largest mental health provider in the state. You can talk to folks who have loved ones incarcerated. You can talk to people that have just come out. They will let you know a lot of folks just couldn't get the help that they were able to get out on the streets, right? And it wasn't until they got to prison where they got a sliver of that in those conditions. Like when we talk about where are we putting our money, where our mouth is, when we're talking about prioritizing public safety, it needs to be, in other facilities. There needs to be an abundance of these facilities and support. And yet we see the majority of this funding going to bullets, authorizing brutality, paying for body bags. And I think tonight is really a pause, so that we can lift that up and recognize that and talk about transformative ways we can actually be investing in our loved ones, ourselves, and our community.
Okay. Cool, Ray. Thank you for that. Thank you. And everybody who's watching, people are starting to log on and realize this is just something we decided to do at the last minute because we realize we are in a state of emergency, if you want to call it. You know what I mean? And that brings me to the next subtopic. Who is accountable? Is accountable. I mean, and let's really dog walk that through, everybody. I mean, is it the police? Is it mental health professionals? Is it city council, the mayor?
So,
Hell, us?
so to answer that question, I would say all of the above, like the system, and I would oftentimes say even communities sometimes have failed a lot of these people. Like for one, I say community because we don't have these conversations about one substance usage or if they live with mental health considerations. Like that's something we tend to sweep under the rug. But on the grander scale of things, so many systems that are supposed to be in play to help keep people safe, to help keep people whole and right. Heal people are accountable. So yes, the police are accountable. The police are currently to raise 33% roughly, 25% of folks who are incarcerated have a diagnosed mental health consideration. Again, and those that are diagnosed. So if 30% of the people come from Wayne County, just the numbers, the math is not math incorrect, as Ray said. The police commission is accountable because, instead of listening to community on how they want to spend money, they're spending it in ways that are just more punitive. They're buying these fancy, tanks and helicopters and drones and all of these other things when they could be, taking a percentage of their funds and moving it to creating something like a non-police crisis unit, crisis response unit. City council needs to be held accountable. The mayor needs to be held accountable. MDHHS needs to be held accountable because, they're one of the largest providers of health insurance, especially, in the city of Detroit, with Medicaid. And there's not many places or psychiatrists or therapy places that, accept Medicaid. So where can people go? Medicaid only covers 3 days of substance use, treatment. And even like the education system, we need to have like something along the lines of like, we have health classes in schools, but people equate health to just the physical body, the physical being. But in order to have a physical body and physical being, you need to have a healthy mind as well. And a lot of kids and young folks, don't recognize that they're dealing with depression or don't recognize that they're dealing with anxiety or maybe even something deeper. There's no knowledge. And the parents also don't know. And schools have a tendency to be like this community center, right? So many schools give away food, so families can eat. They're like a hub for resources, but there are no resources when it comes to mental health. And yeah, I'm gonna get off my soapbox and pass it to anyone else, who wants to hop in and say who else should be accountable.
Wow. Let me popcorn it over, Ash, to Allie, because you come from the mental health profession. You know what I'm saying? that's one thing that's missing. You know what I'm saying? Even in the recent incident, you got the police and you got the family. And then the police is blaming the mental health system. The family then probably used the mental health system. So can you tell us a little bit about their accountability? I got my hands moving and everything. The juices are flowing, y'all.
Yes, yeah. So all parties involved need to be held accountable. So whether mental health facilities, schools, or other parts of the government, what Ashley was saying, I completely agree. All parties involved need to be held accountable. It's really about having the right system in place, the right resources for the situations, and understanding everybody's situation is different, and that the patient or the person experiencing mental distress have autonomy and freedom. A lot of times the person in need isn't listened to when we're told, or that individual is told, this is care for you. And that's what policing is. It's being told this is care, and it is the only kind of care that you deserve, which is false. And in fact, uh, any mental health professional will tell you that punishment in being used in a behavioral health setting is frowned upon. And I know, from practicing behavioral health therapy, even when you are using applied behavior analysis and you're using reinforcement, and there's reinforcement positive, and then there's also punishment. Even to try to apply punishment, you need the parent's permission, and you're never supposed to do it with, like, you're never supposed to go to that without consulting with other clinicians. Like, it's a no-no, and it's completely frowned upon. So, what I'm saying is all these tools exist. There's a lot of things that exist that city government, Detroit, can look at. There's the STAR mental health program that is decreasing the crimes in their city and actually giving people mental health care. There is the Cahoots program, mental health program. There is so many of them that are thriving, and that's what makes it worse, is that they're not trying to invest in an independent mental health program when there's some that are out there for them.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So to break that down, just to recap a little bit, Allie, and I'm putting this is not just Allie, I'm not gonna put her on the spot, but so you're saying in a situation, let's just say real quick before we go into care not criminalization, Ashley's baby, we're gonna talk about, okay, I have a situation, I'm at home, right? Real talk, y'all. I'm at home, I got a brother in the next room going ham, like just he's having an episode. What we always do, call what? 911, right? So you're saying that we're looking at, we should have other options besides just calling the police, because the police is not working. Because we already know when you call the police, you're either going out in a body bag or to jail. You're not even making it to the mental facility, center, nothing probably, right? Is that what we dealing with? And we're here to discuss that's not working.
Could
Yeah.
we maybe like touch on Oregon and how they handle these type of circumstances?
Yeah, absolutely. I was literally just about to jump in. I think in order to answer that, like we need to talk about this, right? So Cahoots, the Cahoots program, for those who don't know, Cahoots is an acronym for Crisis Assistance Helping Out on the Streets. And it was a program that was started a few years back in Oregon. And what they do is they're a non-police crisis call, and yearly they answer roughly about 4,000 calls. And so far, according to their statistics, since 2019, only 311 of those calls ended up needing police backup. So they send social workers out to the scene. They send out to the scene. They send people who have over 500-600 hours worth of training with mental health considerations onto the scene. And it's a voluntary base, so they can't force anyone to go get help. But most of their calls do resolve. in that person on the scene, getting in their van, unhandcuffed and alive, whether they had weapons, whether they don't. The cahoots folks who go out on the scene, they don't have any weapons. And they go take the person to go get the treatment that they may need. And I think some interesting things about Kahoot is that they just increased their funding by like almost 200,000, but it's only 2% of the Eugene Police Department's budget. And so for that specific police department, it only is roughly about a couple million, I believe, annually. Again, only 2% of their police department's budget. And since this program has been around, there has been less arrest. There has been less police involved shootings. There has been more people being able to live another day and to heal another day. And when thinking about this in Detroit, now in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 2 precincts that are supposed to have a crisis response unit. And as we've seen with the young man a few days ago, crisis response unit showed up on the team, but it was with police. And now this man who should be alive isn't. So we definitely need to take the police response, because the police, especially when they're in like a heightened sense or state, those flashing lights, those uniforms, those guns are all triggering and traumatizing for somebody who's already in a state of crisis, which when a person's in a state of crisis and they see something that for them is threatening, it tends to, lift up the aggression. So if we were to take roughly 2% of DPD's budget, their yearly budget is roughly around $343 million.
330 million.
330 million. So
wow,
2% of that is roughly about a little over $6 million. $6 million out of that extreme budget can go to something that would be proven to have less incarceration. It'll be proven keep people alive and healthy. And another interesting thing about that is that the police were just asking to spend ARPA funds, the COVID relief funds, on ShotSpotter, which is just going to have more police go into these crises or go into these different situations ready to bear arms, when they can take that ARPA money and fully fund this. They can take the surplus money that they have and fully fund this. So the money is there.
Wow. Michigan Liberation's Respect the Roots. Coming next week, part 2 of the Bullets, Brutality, and Body Bags. A conversation on Detroit policing, mental health, and public safety. Make sure you tune in next week. Michigan Liberation Education Fund, C3, conducts grassroots organizing, leadership development, and civic engagement activities. Michigan Liberation C4 and Michigan Liberation Action Fund, IE, are sister organizations.